All right, let's talk about cybersecurity. They always say the first step to building a really solid defense is knowing your enemy. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to meet them. Let's dive in.
So when you picture a hacker, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's probably that classic image, right? Some lone figure in a hoodie, sitting in a dark room, just furiously typing away at a keyboard. Well, the reality is so much more complex and, honestly, way more interesting than that.
The thing is, we're not dealing with just one single type of villain. It's more like a whole rogues gallery of digital adversaries, and every single one of them has their own unique motivations, their own goals, their own way of doing things, and figuring out who's who is absolutely crucial because it helps us anticipate their next move and build a much smarter defense.
Okay, first up in our gallery are the actors who aren't in it for the money. Nope, they're driven by something else entirely, a belief system. These are the people who use digital tools to make a big, loud statement. And that brings us to the hacktivists. The name says it all, right? It's a mix of hacker and activism. Their actions are all fueled by ideology. Maybe it's a social cause, a search for what they see as justice, or just a flat-out defiance of political powers. Their main goal is to send a message, even if their methods get pretty disruptive. So what does a typical hacktivist look like? Well, their intent is usually about grabbing attention for their cause, not necessarily causing malicious harm. But here's the catch. They can be incredibly unpredictable. These groups are prime targets for manipulation by outsiders, and sometimes members just go rogue with their own agendas. Plus, their skill level is all over the map. You could be dealing with a single person using basic tools or a highly sophisticated, even state-sponsored operation. All right, let's move on to our next category. This group includes some of the most unpredictable and, frankly, potentially damaging actors out there, mainly because they're often operating from right under our noses. First, you've got the script kiddies. Now, these are the amateurs of the hacking world. They don't really have deep technical skills. Instead, they find and use hacking tools they download online without really understanding the first thing about how they actually work. It's kind of like giving a powerful weapon to someone who doesn't know how to use it safely.
And this case is a perfect example of the danger. Back in 2015, a 15-year-old followed some simple instructions for an SQL injection he found online and used it to attack a huge telecom company. Because script kiddies often don't have a specific target in mind, they can end up causing massive accidental damage, which makes them a really unique and dangerous kind of threat. And now for what many experts consider one of the biggest threats of all, insiders. We're talking about people who are already inside the castle walls, employees, partners, collaborators. They have legitimate access, real credentials, which means anything malicious they do can fly completely under the radar, sometimes for a very long time. The entire system is built on trusting them.
You can really break down insider threats into three main types. First, there's the malicious insider. This is someone who intentionally causes harm for personal gain. Then you have the negligent or just careless insider, someone who doesn't follow security rules and accidentally opens a door for an attack. And finally, there's the purely accidental insider, who just makes an honest mistake with big consequences.
And believe me, this isn't just theory. In 2020, a criminal group actually tried to recruit a Tesla employee. They offered him a huge sum of money just to install ransomware on the company's internal network. Now, luckily, the employee was honest and reported it straight to the FBI. But it just goes to show you how vulnerable even the biggest companies are to this kind of attack from within.
Okay, now we're moving into a whole different league. We're talking about the actors who are in this purely for the money. This is where cybercrime stops being a hobby and becomes a highly organized professional business.
Cybercriminals are exactly what they sound like. Professional criminals who use technology to make a profit. These aren't just lone wolves. We're talking about organized groups with serious technical skills and, often, a lot of financial backing. Their bread and butter is everything from identity theft and bank fraud to stealing and selling valuable corporate secrets.
And the absolute peak of this professionalism, you see it in modern ransomware gangs. I mean, look at this. They're structured just like a regular company. You've got developers writing the code, access teams who break in, data analysts, and even a customer support desk to help victims pay the ransom. So the key takeaway here is, when a business gets hit, they aren't just fighting some random hacker. They're essentially fighting a rival company, one with its own R&D department and a ruthless drive for profit. It's a whole illicit business ecosystem.
And the profits? They are staggering. One study tracked cryptocurrency payments and found that in just 2 years, nearly 20,000 victims paid about $16 million to just a handful of these ransomware groups. It's an incredibly lucrative business.
This really drives the point home. Get this, in a single month, just 30 ransomware gangs were behind the data leaks from over 2,000 different organizations. You can see how a few big players, like Conti and Maze, just completely dominate the market, causing an insane amount of damage all on their own.
Now we're heading to the top tier, the absolute apex predators of the digital world. These are the groups with the most resources, the highest skills, and the most high-profile targets. Think of them as the spies and the soldiers for hire of the internet.
So on one side, you have what are called Advanced Persistent Threats, or APTs. These are usually state-sponsored groups, and they are playing the long game. Their goal is quiet, long-term espionage. They want to gain access to a major target, like a government ministry or a power grid, and just sit there silently for months, even years, gathering intelligence. Then, on the other side, you have the cyber mercenaries. They aren't loyal to a flag, they're loyal to a paycheck. They operate on a hit-and-run basis. A client hires them for a specific job, they get it done, and then they disappear.
So with all these different bad actors running around out there, you might be wondering, how in the world do cybersecurity professionals keep track of them all? How do they know who they're actually up against in any given attack?
Well, they do it by building these incredibly detailed intelligence profiles. For every known group, experts gather key info. They give them a name, figure out their suspected country of origin, and identify who they tend to target. But most importantly, they analyze the group's unique tactics, techniques, and procedures. Think of it as their digital fingerprints, along with the specific malware and tools they like to use.
And to make sure all this intelligence can be shared quickly and easily, they use standards like STIX. The best way to think of STIX is like a universal language for cybersecurity. It gives analysts a formal way to connect all the dots, linking a specific threat actor to their malicious campaigns, the indicators that give them away, and the exact vulnerabilities they like to exploit. So there you have it, our tour of the digital rogues gallery. We've seen that the enemy isn't just one person in a hoodie, but a whole spectrum of adversaries, from the unpredictable script kiddie to the corporate-style ransomware gang and the patient nation-state spy. And that leaves us with one final thought. In a world that runs on data, the enemy you should be watching most closely really depends on who you are. For an individual, it's probably the opportunist. For a business, it's the professional criminal. And for a nation, it's the spy. So the real question is, which one are you preparing for?